Hi guys, James back with another video at long last, and this one came about, I was starting to build up some more lists, and while I had one or two others that were completed, I started thinking about a list that not necessarily involves hidden gems, but a list that I've certainly never done before and that I don't see a lot of online. And if you clicked the link, you know that this one is my list for the top 10 director's cuts. Now you could also put in brackets alternate cuts, extended cuts, unrated cuts. I'm just lumping it under the umbrella of director's cuts. So, largely these are the director's cuts. Now, sometimes the director will say that, well, this is just an extra cut I put out. The theatrical version, the movie that went out in theaters, and really Scott has said this a number of times, that was my director's cut. This is extra for the fans. But I would think that it's still the director that's involved, so it could be still considered a director's cut. Anyway, on to the list. Now the list will start with number 10, and this one I would probably consider, I'd modify the term director's cut with an original director's cut, the original director's cut, and it is Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now this one was released back in 2017. Zack Snyder, who had a tragedy in the family, left the production, and they brought in Joss Whedon to finish the film. We ended up reshooting a lot of the film and putting out what some summed up as Justice League or whatever. I had a great time with Justice League, the version put out largely directed by Joss Whedon, and I've said this, and I don't know if Jason's going to watch this, my brother from the movie Madhouse. I still maintain that I think it's a better movie than the first Avengers film. And when there was word that Zack Snyder was going to be allowed to finish his version of the film, his original version, plus expanding it to the just over 4-hour version that we got, the cut dubbed the Snyder Cut, but actually released as Zack Snyder's Justice League. And initially, I thought I still couldn't decide which one I really liked more. I will admit, I will freely admit, the mustache gate thing. It's the only real issue I have with the film. Aside from the scenes that are involved, I really like the scenes. It's just, it's hard to ignore what's going on right here. Especially like the opening of the film where the kids are filming Superman and talking to him. He has a great speech he talks about in there. And it's hard to ignore what's going on here. That being said, when I saw Zack Snyder's Justice League, almost a totally different film. But what it does have is an extra scene with the Joker towards the end. And so what this gave me was I think the two best performances put out by an actor this year are both by Jared Leto. And it's hard to say which one's first. I'm gonna put his role in The Little Things as Albert Sparma as number one, because he was in there for the full movie. And I'm gonna put his performance in one scene in this movie as the Joker as the number 2 performance of the year. So Jared Leto's got both. If I see a third movie that he's in and it counts as number 3, well, who knows? Embarrassment of riches, I suppose. Anyway, yeah, okay, so love Justice League, love Zack Snyder's Justice League, but it's such a monumentally different movie and a twice as long and just phenomenal. Okay, number nine, we have a film from 2012. This is a film by Oliver Stone called Savages. Now, this one didn't do very well, and I don't know that it was all that highly regarded. And I had a chance to watch it, and I didn't, and I regretted that because I ended up watching it when it came out on Blu-ray, and I really liked the movie. And then I watched the director's cut that was also included on the disc. And aside from, like, say, nudity or sex or violence or language or whatever, I'd say it's largely the same film, but there's one very notable difference, and that the character played by John Travolta, and he is a DEA agent, Dennis Kane, and he has what you don't really get in the theatrical version is that he has a wife who's in the hospital dying of cancer. And in the director's cut, you get a scene with him at her bedside delivering this pretty heartfelt monologue to her, like expressing his love for her and how she always supported him. Oh, kills me. And that scene alone puts this version way above the theatrical, even though the theatrical version's great. So, if you're interested in watching the movie, I highly recommend, watch the theatrical version first, cool, but I highly recommend the director's cut. Number 8, we have a film from 2010, one of the many versions of Robin Hood. And this was the version done by Ridley Scott, starring Russell Crowe, Cate Blanchett, Oscar Isaac, Mark Strong, lots of people in this one. And this is another case of the theatrical version of Robin Hood is great. What you get in the director's cut, which I think is, it's close to like a half hour longer, you get a lot more, you get a different opening, but you get a lot more character development between like what you'd call the Lost Boys or something, the kids who live in the forest, and their relationship also with Maid Marian and Robin Hood. Excuse me, although he's not known as Robin Hood until the very end of the movie. You get more scenes with Robin and Marian, plus Robin and Marian and the kids of the forest. And that's essentially what it is. There's just more richer character development in the director's cut that you're allowed to experience. Okay, my personal favorite Robin Hood version of the Robin Hood story. Okay, number 7, we have another Zack Snyder film, and this is Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, the Ultimate Edition. Now, the version that was put out in theaters was about 2.5 hours, and I didn't really like it at all. I didn't enjoy it, and I think some of my friends, Rob and Jason, would agree. They watched it, didn't enjoy it, and just out of, I don't know if it was morbid curiosity or whatever, I went and picked it up when it came out on Blu-ray because it had the Ultimate Edition. And like Zack Snyder's director's cuts are generally pretty great. And so I think I've still only ever seen the theatrical version in the theater. I watched the Ultimate Edition, the director's cut, and it's about 3 hours. And I don't know what it was, but my opinion did a complete 180. The movie, because it's very much rearranged into the proper order of things, and the movie just flows so much better. It makes so much more sense, and it's just a complete, not a completely different movie like the two versions of Justice League, although it's one that I believe can turn your opinion around if you didn't enjoy it in the theater. It just works so much better. Excuse me. All right, so that was Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. Okay, number 6, and again, not intentional. Number 6, we have Watchmen, also directed by Zack Snyder. And again, when I saw Watchmen in the theater, great. I was enthralled. Then they put out the director's cut on DVD and Blu-ray, and the director's cut gives you just a little more story, a lot more action. And even though the movie was graphic enough, it gives you more of the great action that's in the theatrical version. And if that was the only other version that existed, fine. You have the great theatrical version, you have an awesome director's cut. But he went a step further, and he put out the Ultimate Edition. And what they did at the time was they put out, you could get the director's cut with the digital comic book version of Tales from the Black Freighter, which exists in the graphic novel. And it's sort of, since the world is populated by superheroes, what do people in this world read about? Well, apparently they read about pirates and pirate stories. So what they did with this movie was they spliced all throughout the movie scenes where a kid's at the comic book stand, which you see in the theatrical and the director's cuts, but they have a lead in and a lead out where it cuts to black and you see a clip of the Tales from the Black Freighter, which is a hand-drawn animation. And then it leads back out the kids at the comic book stand, and then the movie continues, then it goes, and it's just spliced all throughout the movie. It's like a little snippet, a complete Tales from the Black Freighter. And it's just a complete movie for me. The movie, like, you take out the Tales from the Black Freighter, it's not a largely different film from the director's cut, but they had to add in as I said, the lead in, lead out from the kid reading the comic book when you see the Tales from the Black Freighter scenes. So, any version, I think, that you want to see of this movie, of the 3, is great in my opinion. But I would recommend all 3, and they just get better the more versions you watch. So that was Watchmen. Okay, number 5, we have a movie from 2007. It's a Quentin Tarantino film, and one of my favorite Tarantino films, called Death Proof. Now, this was one of the 2 parts. It was the second half of the Grindhouse film that him and Robert Rodriguez put out. And Grindhouse is a great film, but the movies were very, very shortened, very, very cut down, because they had to be mashed together with a bunch of trailers before and in between. So you didn't get a complete full-length movie. Well, they later split them up because they did that in other countries. Apparently the audiences in other countries didn't get the whole Grindhouse concept. So they released them in these versions internationally. So they put out the extended versions, or director's original cut of the movies Planet Terror and Death Proof. But I'm only talking about Death Proof here. Because while Planet Terror is a fun, entertaining movie, I don't think the extended added a whole lot more to it. The director's cut of Death Proof, I thought, expanded on a good movie into an amazing movie. Lots of scenes that weren't there to begin with. Well, not there to begin with, but like you could see, you go back and you can see where the holes are, where they were lacking. And it just slowly became probably my second or third favorite Tarantino movie of all, out of all his 10 movies. And I say 10, there are 10. Kill Bill is not one movie, it's 2. Anyway, my opinion. So that is Death Proof. Okay, number 4, we have a film from 2009, and it is Halloween 2, the sequel to Rob Zombie's remake of Halloween, released a few years earlier. Now, a lot of people don't like this movie to begin with, and probably like the director's cut even less. I'm not one of those people. I think it's one of his best movies. And as much as I like his version of Halloween, his version of Halloween 2 is unbelievable. I saw it in the theater and thought, man, this movie is so hardcore. Then you watch the director's cut, because the big difference between the theatrical and the director's cut is Laurie Strode, and played by Scout Taylor Compton. And you get in the theatrical version, and she's like a good person, and like she's on the road to recovery and going up basically before tragedy strikes. In the director's cut, she is just a wreck. She is traumatized from the last film, and she's lashing out at people. She's just like a complete bitch in the movie and having a very rough go of it. Now that's one of the big differences. The other big difference is at the very end, which, okay, spoiler. In the theatrical, the movie ends with Michael being killed and Laurie picking up his mask and walking down the road, and then later it cuts to her in a plain white like asylum, and her mom on a horse walking towards her, and it's like, okay, it's very weird and it's very unclear of what's going on. And in the director's cut, you get more shots of the horse, which help explain the ending. But at the end, you get Michael actually speaking. He says one word. He's wrestling with Dr. Loomis, and Dr. Loomis is like, Michael, for God's sakes, or something. You see Michael, he's just like, die! And stabs him. And I thought it was awesome. And Laurie picks up like a knife or a gun or something, and she gets gunned down by the police because she's losing her mind throughout the movie in the director's cut. And then seeing her in the hospital with her mom on the horse walking towards her is basically her dying. And it makes so much more sense. This version makes so much more sense, and it's so much cooler, even though the theatrical version is great. But it's just, if you like the theatrical version, I think you'll love the director's cut. If you do, that is. So that is Halloween, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Number 3, we have a film from 2014. It is X-Men Days of Future Past. And one of the best, I would still put it as my favorite X-Men movie. X-Men / Wolverine movie. With Logan being a very close second. And I thought, like, if the theatrical version was the only version that existed, just like Watchmen, fine. The movie's amazing. But what a lot of people were upset by was that in the marketing materials you had not what's her name? Anna Paquin, who plays Rogue, and she's featured in the trailer, and in the movie at the end you see her for about 5 seconds, maybe, just walks by with Bobby, and that's it. It's like, well, what the hell happened to Rogue? And what Bryan Singer was able to do was put out the Rogue cut. And what it did was it added about 20-25 minutes to the running time, but it, with the exception of one continuity error between Mystique and Beast, what it did was it had them go rescue Rogue, who was being held in the X-Men mansion, and bring her back. If you've seen X-Men Days of Future Past, you know, like, Kitty is holding on to Wolverine, but he's been slashing her because he's traumatized from the time travel stuff. And she's injured and she's bleeding, she's fading fast. So they bring Rogue in to borrow her power and continue on. And you get the whole, hello, Logan, and you see Wolverine bolt up in bed, Rogue, which you saw in the trailer for the Rogue cut, because they put it out like several months after, I think. And it just made, I don't know how you make an amazing movie more amazing, but they did, in my opinion. But I could watch either of them and be perfectly happy. But I really enjoyed the scenes you get with Rogue in this one. So that's X-Men Days of Future Past. Number 2, we have a film from 2014, film based on one of the many Nicholas Sparks novels. This is The Best of Me. And this is by far my favorite Nicholas Sparks adaptation, film that's been adapted from one of his books. And you got James Marsden, Michelle Monaghan as the two grown-up stars. You have Luke Bracey and, what's her name? Leanna Liberato as the younger versions of them. And you had Gerald McRaney in there, Major Dad, and who does a fantastic job. And what I used to say about, because I've never seen a movie based on Nicholas Sparks' novel in the theater. I always plan to, but I never get around to it. So when I'm asking people about it, and I don't care about spoilers a lot of the time, because if it's a good movie, it's a good movie. And I'll ask, okay, so in this one, okay, so who dies? Because almost every single one of them, somebody dies. And I won't spoil who dies in the theatrical version. I don't think it's really a spoiler to say that someone dies, because someone always dies in his movies. But what they did was, when they put out the Blu-ray, you got the theatrical version and you have the Tears of Joy edition. And it's an alternate director's cut where I don't know why it'd be a spoiler to say the character that dies in this version doesn't die. And you get more of a happy ending as opposed to sort of like a melancholic ending in the theatrical, or bittersweet. Both versions are fantastic, but I prefer the Tears of Joy edition just because the ending just goes way up, in my opinion. So that is The Best of Me. Now, number 1, we have a film from 2005, another Ridley Scott film called Kingdom of Heaven. Now, I saw this one in the theater. I did a double feature. I watched this and House of Wax. Had a blast with House of Wax. It's a very fun horror movie. And I watched this one, and I thought it was a good movie. Swords and Sandal kind of thing. Takes place around the time of the Crusades. You have Orlando Bloom going off with Liam Neeson to fight to liberate Jerusalem. You have Eva Green in there. You have Martin Sokas, Edward Norton in sort of he plays the king of Jerusalem, and he's also a leper, so he's always has a mask on his face. And if you didn't know he was in the movie, you may not be able to pick him out. But if you know ahead of time, and I did, you can. He's putting on an accent, but you can still tell by the voice that it's him. Anyway, and I thought it was a good movie in the theater, as I said. And it was like maybe approaching 2.5 hours, the theatrical version, and so 2 hours and 24 minutes. So a good length, good long movie. Then they put out the director's cut. Now there's 2 versions of the director's cut. There's the director's cut that just has the movie from beginning to end. Then there's the Roadshow edition. On special editions of the DVD and Blu-ray that has an overture, I think intermission and entr'acte. I think extra black screen with orchestral music at the beginning, middle, during the intermission, and at the end. And that's just extra music or whatever. So I'll just talk about the director's cut. The director's cut is 3 hours and 14 minutes. So they added nearly an hour to the movie. And it is phenomenal. the thing is, I went back and watched the theatrical version again, and you just feel it's a major gut punch, because you watch the movie just like, oh my God, look at all the stuff they cut out. The movie got gutted. It got seriously gutted when he was forced to cut it down to put it out in the theater. They cut out like an entire storyline or storylines. And I still appreciate the theatrical version because it's a well-made movie, and had I never seen the director's cut, that's how it would be. But you watch the director's cut, you can't go back. You can't go back to the theatrical version because you're missing out on so much gold. So that's the order I would recommend you watch them in. If you're a fan of Ridley Scott, and I'm a huge fan of Ridley Scott, watch the theatrical version of Kingdom of Heaven and then watch the director's cut, because you'll be less of a shock to your system than if you watch the director's cut and go, well, let's see what was put out in the theaters. Oh, it's such a night and day difference. Anyway, I have some honorable mentions, which I've never done before, but they're ones where they put out like an unrated or alternate version of a film that I didn't appreciate right away and then have grown to love and prefer. And actually, I will stop and I will leave that for, if I can do a part 2 of this. I think I'll do that. I'll leave you hanging and leave these ones, because I had about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. And I can probably find a few more to round out a top 10, so I can do top 10 director's cuts part 2. Okay, that is what I will do. And as always, like, subscribe, comment, suggest, all are welcome. And I hope you enjoyed this one. I really enjoyed talking about it. So I'll see you next time, and toodles.